Okay, welcome everybody to Hidden Meanings, and it's good to have you. Let's take a look at the magic board, and it's the address, Hidden Meanings, Post Office Box 569, Forked River, New Jersey 08731, and the email is bdona910782000 at yahoo.com. And right now, this is our website, www.hiddenmeanings.com. And right now, we have 1,482,953 visitors. So we're about, 17,000 short of 1.5 million. What I wanted to do first, I wanted to share with you an email from someone, and maybe you have the answer for this person. It's a guy named Bill from Philadelphia sent it, and this is what he says. Bill, he says, are you aware that you are the only person now or ever that understands what's written in the Bible? I've done as much research as possible, and you're the only one saying what you say. How is this possible? And isn't that interesting? How is it possible? And I asked myself that many times. So I have many moments to ponder that question. How the information flows sometimes. It's difficult to explain. You just type things on, and then it goes on almost by itself. I wanted to go back for a moment to look at the prediction about 2012. And that was given by Pakal Votan. and most people consider that Pakal Votan was a Mayan, and he wasn't. There was a landing in the land of Kem about 26,000 years ago. And a detachment from that force that landed, UFO force, wound up in South America in the land of what is now called the Mayans. And the person who spoke about this 2012 was from a very advanced race that came from another planet, another dimension somewhere, so many thousand years ago. But this is what Pakal Votan said. Pakal Votan knew that humanity would become disconnected from the laws of the natural world and would fall ignorant of our sacred interdependence with nature. He foretold of our accelerated technological society and the resulting damage of our collective divergence from natural law in exchange for materialistic values. Now, when people start to think about, well, do you believe in 2012 and so forth and so on? Well, 2012 is the end point. You're living through the prediction right now. The changes that you're seeing. One of the things we're seeing now is tremendous snow amounts that we've never seen around here before. And of course, you're seeing people on television saying, well, this proves there's no global warming. Well, Colbert, did you ever see Stephen Colbert? He had an important announcement the other night. He says, hell, it's dark out, which means it'll never be light again, this is how stupid it is. There's a guy named Bill Nye who's been going around. He's a very prestigious weather person or whatever he does. But anyhow, he said that the snow that we're having is because of the top waters of the Pacific Ocean have warmed to such an extent that the water being absorbed up into the atmosphere is much more than we've seen in the past. And as that gets into the jet stream, it comes across and dumps either as torrential rains or, if you get under 32 degrees, snow. So there's definitely a climate change, a global climate change. And Paschal Wotan talked about that. And he knew that there was going to be a result based on the changes that would come from an advanced technological society, because he was from an advanced technological society. So we move away from natural law for materialist values. And today we would say that respect for nature is okay as long as it doesn't get in the way of corporate profit. Now, Wotan never said that the world would come to an end or any of that stuff that you see in a lot of the things where people don't understand it. He said this. His prophecy spoke of the closing of this world age cycle on December the 21st, 2012. As this date approaches, we are collectively in a transition phase of the old world dying and a new world being born. And what we're going to get into as we continue to work on this is a new word and a new phrase that will connect to this, and it's called the omega point. The omega point, that term was kind of coined by a Catholic priest by the name of Pierre Teilhard Chardin. And what he was speaking of, and what science knows too, is what happens is when your creativity accelerates. In other words, let's show you how this works. For millions of years on the earth, nothing happened, and about 100 years ago, inventions started, and they've come at a rapid rate, you know. In the last 100 years, everything that was invented has been invented. But what has occurred here is that where it used to take a long time to try to develop something, when you start to develop things after the first development, you build on top of one another. In other words, somebody invents a telephone, and then somebody else comes along and invents a portable phone and a cell phone, and then all of this stuff. And everything starts happening very, very fast. But what occurs is technology gets way ahead of wisdom. And you reach a point where nature itself has to stop it because it becomes self-destructive. And that point is called 0 point or the omega point. And many people today now believe that the omega point is 2012. An old world dying and a new world being born. An old world that places profit and materialism ahead of nature. That is dying. A new world that places a respect of nature ahead of profits and materialism has to be born. And it's nothing that anybody does. That's the funny part about it. It just happens. Nobody plans it. Nobody says, oh, we have to do this. It just happens. It's like the internet. It wasn't there, and then all of a sudden it was there. Nobody knows where it came from. But it changes everybody's lives. And nobody asks, where did this come from? How did this work? Who cares? You just email and do all this stuff. And your whole life is changed by something that suddenly was there. There's a graphic example of placing profits ahead of our treatment of nature. It's called factory farming. Animals are literally tortured to death and held in confinement in ways that are beyond horror. It's something that just bothers the hell out of me. I mean, when I look at this, I can't even believe that, you know, we're the civilized ones. and then you say, you know, this is how the omega point works. You get so obsessed with profit, you develop ways to do more and more and more, and you don't care of the results, whether it be nature or you and I. The animals are crammed together so they can't move before they're killed, and they have to be filled with antibiotics that everybody eats. And then such a threat to the earth comes that the scientists at Johns Hopkins University had to publish a warning that it came from them, but it could have come from Pakhel Votan himself. This is a warning, and this was just put out a few weeks ago by the scientists at Johns Hopkins University, that has to do with factory farming and the food you eat. Johns Hopkins University, it's very prestigious. Some studies cited in the Johns Hopkins article suggest that methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the staph infection that caused near apocalyptic warnings across the nation in the last couple of years, may come from the farm and not from the hospital, as was widely believed. Another Johns Hopkins researcher, Kellogg Schwab, said he's more than just concerned. This development of drug resistance scares the hell out of me. He asserts that the level of danger has yet to be widely acknowledged. It's not appreciated until it's your mother or your son or you trying to fight off an infection that will not go away because the last mechanism to fight it has been usurped by someone putting it into a pig or a chicken. And why do they have to fill animals with antibiotics and hormones? Because they don't allow them an inch of space between one another. You see? This is part of that onward crush to the omega point. We've developed a way to mass produce food, but in so doing, we have totally destroyed these animals as being animals, and now we're about to destroy ourselves. This here is a sample of something that demands an act. There's no room. See? They don't allow them any space. And so they have to fill them with antibiotics. And I've often thought to myself how the earth is a living being, not some plastic or inert object, but a living being from which life grows. And I thought, how nature could express itself in a meaningful way. How could nature, if nature somehow could scream in anguish at the brutality, if nature somehow could scream her suffering and her horror? And I often wondered, I wonder what it would look like if we could see nature screaming in agony of what we did. And then a picture came from PETA, and I looked at it, and I said, this is a visible expression from nature as to what we're doing. I mean, how terrible is that? And you know, human beings are eating that. And how can anyone think of themselves as civilized and yet live in a culture that allows this? How can we file into church and sing songs to the Creator and not understand what the Creator must feel towards us for what we've allowed to be done to His creation? I had this picture on the internet, and I received an email from something. God gave dominion over animals. I said, and I wrote back, I said, look, have dominion means to control it. It doesn't mean to torture or abuse it or act inhumane. But now we read from the scientists at Johns Hopkins what the inevitable result will be. Millions of humans slaughtered by a virus that can't be cured because of the inhumane and terrible way that we have treated the animals that provide our food. The factory farms say they can't afford to allow the animals to have humane conditions before they're killed. They can't afford to allow them to graze outside. I believe this next picture answers that question. Look what it says. It says that he's raised on grass and hay, and he lives happily on a pasture by the ocean. His meat is free of antibiotics, but can we afford to eat it? We can't afford not to. We can't, but you know, how devilish. I mean, do you see what Votan was saying? What we will do for the sake of profit and for the sake of mass production, how we will destroy and terribly hurt nature. Yes?
There was a thing on CBS News the other day.
Why don't you come up for a second, because nobody can hear you.
Katie Couric did a piece on the CBS Evening News the other night about that. Mm-hmm. And what they were talking about was the farmers are getting that MRSA. Mm-hmm. And they didn't figure it out until it was like they couldn't even fix it.
Yeah.
So it's not only the animals are being affected, now the people who are raising the animals are being affected. So it's already kind of started.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. That's a good point. Well, I don't know if it's too late. Maybe it is, but time just continues to move in sections of great change. But you see, you can't say anymore about, well, what do you think of that prediction? You're living in it. You're seeing fulfilled in those pictures exactly what Paco Wotan said was going to happen. Thank you. It wasn't that long ago, you know, when the cows were in the pastures and the pigs were slopping around in the mud and the chickens were in the coop or running around in the yard. But now it's become cement, steel, plastic, and the animals jammed together. Calves can't turn around. Chickens are jammed. Pigs are kept in steel cages. The animals have their babies ripped from them at birth. It's strange, but all this happens, and you know, we don't know anything about it. We go to the shop, right, and everything's in a little plastic bin. But the chickens are gone, and the pigs are gone, and the cows are disappearing, and everything is placed in steel buildings. Here's a picture of a factory farm. Nice rolling land, and actually, this is worse than. Well, I shouldn't say that, but this is like Auschwitz or one of those terrible places. A typical factory farm. Here's another picture of one. And take a look at these animals. Rows and rows of dirt and filth, and they're jammed together and so forth, and they can't move and will never see the light of day. And here's pigs. Look at this. They can't move. Can't move an inch. Here are calves whose necks are chained to the walls in front of them so they can't move, so these people can eat the nice veal. Here's probably the one that hurts the most. A mother sow giving to her babies, and look at how it's done. What kind of human, God-loving, and the guy who created this thing that holds her in place and she can't move probably goes to church. And here's how it winds up. You don't think they're throwing these things away, do you? Or do they go into dog food, or God knows where they go and might even wind up on your table. So who's going to buy these dead bodies? Here's a picture of God's other animals. They're in church. And they're singing songs. And while they're singing songs, that's going on. Nobody knows, nobody cares. Make any difference? So what do the two have in common? One well-dressed group is trying to save their soul. They know these horrors go on, but they never raise their voice. They patronize those who commit the horrors. God, through Jesus, seeks mercy and compassion and kindness and a humane mind. But the group above has no idea that compassion is in the dumpster. Humane thought is in the dumpster. Mercy is in the dumpster. God is in the dumpster. So, before we move on, let me give you an update on one of our old four-legged friends. You haven't heard from a long time, but a new news release just came out. Oscar the cat. Oscar is still at it. Oscar wandered into a Rhode Island nursing home, and soon demonstrated he had a unique ability. Come on down, Paul. Just come on down. Oscar had a unique ability to tell when a person was about 3 hours from dying. And Oscar would then jump into bed with that person, snuggle up to them, and kind of see them across into the other side. A nursing home administrator said that Oscar was more accurate than any human. We've been reporting on Oscar for several years, and I'm happy to tell you there's a new report out on Oscar that just came out February the 1st. And guess where the report comes from? England. The report comes from the London Telegraph in England, and you can read it by going to www.telegraph.co.uk. There's a new book written about Oscar. And here's the report. The headline was, Cat Predicts 50 Deaths in Rhode Island Nursing Home. A cat with an uncanny ability to detect when nursing home patients are about to die has proven itself in around 50 cases by curling up with them in their final hours, according to a new book. Dr. David Dosa, a geriatrician and assistant professor at Brown University, said that 5 years of records showed Oscar rarely erring, sometimes proving medical staff at the New England nursing home wrong in their predictions over which patients were close to death. The cat, now 5 and generally unsociable. He really is unsociable because they had a big party and they're going to give Oscar a commendation for what he's done, you know, helping these people, and they picked him up and he bit the guy that bit him up. He doesn't want to mess around with people. The cat, now 5 and generally unsociable, was adopted as a kitten at the Shore Nursing in Providence, Rhode Island, which specializes in caring for people with severe dementia. Dr. Dosa first publicized Oscar's gift in an article in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2007. And since then, the cat has gone on to double the number of imminent deaths it has sensed and convinced the geriatrician that it is no fluke. The tortoiseshell and white cat spends its day pacing from room to room, rarely spending any time with patients except those with just hours to live. If kept outside the room of a dying patient, Oscar will scratch on the door trying to get in. When nurses once placed the cat on the bed of a patient they thought close to death, Oscar charged out and went to sit beside someone else in another room. The cat's judgment was better than that of the nurses. The second patient died that evening while the first one lived for 2 more days. Joe? Dr. Dosa and other staff are so confident in Oscar's accuracy that they will alert family members when the cat jumps onto a bed and stretches out beside its occupant. It's not like he dawdles. He'll slip out for 2 minutes, grab some kibble, and then he's back at the patient's side. It's like he's virtually, literally on a vigil. Making rounds with Oscar, the extraordinary gift of an ordinary cat, Dr. Dosa offers no solid scientific explanation for Oscar's behavior. Relatives and friends of patients have been comforted and sometimes praised the cat in newspaper death notices and eulogies. People were actually taking great comfort in this idea that this animal was there and might be there when their loved ones eventually passed. He was there when they couldn't be. Well, here's the latest picture of Oscar. Looks like he's put on a little weight, but as you can see, he's still working. Huh?
He looks like our picture.
Yeah, he's gotten a little heavy, but so we look at the beauty of this animal who has a special God gift to give to humans. Then we think again of the animals given to humans that they may live, who are so brutally abused, as we showed earlier, and then the question leaps up to confront us. What happened? When did some of us become so evil? When did the human mass mind simply decide to ignore that which is inhumane and plow on for its own benefit? When did the human mind decide that only getting money was important and it made no difference how it was made? back to Pakhel Votan again. Pakhel Votan, hit the other one, John. Pakhel Votan said humanity will become disconnected from the laws of the natural world and will fall ignorant of our sacred interdependence. When you see the pictures that we've looked at from these horrible places, of the torture of these animals, this is what's happened. The prophecy has been fulfilled. You don't have to wait around anymore to see if it's going to happen. It is happening, and you can see it with your own eyes. Humanity will suffer because of the technological society will cause a collective divergence from natural law in exchange for materialist values. This world age cycle will close on December the 21st, 2012. As this date approaches, humanity collectively will be in a transition phase of the old world dying and a new world being born. Someone so very, very long ago knew that the human mind would evolve in a particular way that was based on something other than history. There was no history on the earth that would have allowed Pakhel Votan to know this if he was a Mayan priest. He wasn't. He was something else. He had to be something else or he couldn't have known it. We've been over this and over this. There was no Mayans that made this prediction. The 2012 prediction was not made by a Mayan priest. It was made by a UFO commander who had come to this earth from another place. When the Emerald UFO fleet landed in Kem, which is now Egypt, 26,000 years ago, they sent out groups in UFOs to various parts of the world. One detachment landed in South America, in the area we now know to be the land of the Mayans. And from this detachment came the alien UFO commander we now refer to as Pakhel Votan. Here, if you read it, it says some 1,300 years BC, Egypt, the ancient Kem, many delegations of priests were sent to other parts of the world. You have to understand something. When ancient people were talking about this descent of these ships, alien UFO ships to Kem, they were regarded as gods. And the people that got at them, they called them priests and all this stuff because they were considered angels, supernatural. Among these were some of the pyramid priests who carried with them the emerald tablets. So they went to South America. This particular group of priests bearing the tablets emigrated to South America where they found a flourishing race, the Mayas. Among these, the priests settled, and in the 10th century, the Mayas had thoroughly settled the Yucatan. The tablets were placed beneath the altar of one of the great temples of the sun god. Now, the concept that I bring to the table, that Votan was an astronaut of some kind, a UFO alien of some kind, is borne out by the stone carving that the Mayans made of Pakhel Votan. Now, in this slide, you'll see the carving alongside of a picture of astronaut John Glenn in his training module. Now there's John Glenn in his training module, and here is the stone carving made by the Mayan of Pakhel Votan. I mean, and it's just so obvious as to who this was and how a prediction. So now we can say, wait a minute, the prediction was not made by somebody in the jungle and ancient people that go around making corn. It was made by an advanced technological mind of someone who knew. And someone who told us what was going to happen, and we're seeing it. Here's another look at that Pakhel Votan picture so you can get a better look at it. This was a stone carving made by the Mayans when he had left, and you could see they got him positioned in some kind of a craft. So we can pretty much discount the Mayans as having anything to do with either the December 21st, 2012 statement about the change of the mind to one of greed and separation from nature, and pretty much discount the Mayans of authors of the calendar that ends on December the 21st, 2012. That calendar is the wheel with 8 spokes. It came from the Emerald UFO commander, who was the commander of 8, from Hermopolis, which was the city of 8, reporting to the 8 higher forces. The calendar wheel with 8 spokes then came out as the Mayan calendar, and you can see the spokes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And everything after that that has to do with the 2012 prophecy, whether it be from Nostradamus, whether it be the Buddhic prophecy that takes the same turn, whether it be the Jesus Coptic key, it's all the wheel with 8 spokes. So now we can reasonably assume that someone from another location in space and time had scientific knowledge of just how the human evolution and mind force would move. It's all a predictable cycle. So the prediction of something culminating on December the 21st, 2012 was pretty much as certain as when the weather forecasters make now as to when a storm moving off the Pacific into California will hit New Jersey in the form of rain or snow. The science is there. So is the certainty. And if we can get into our heads the fact that there was a force that came from another planet, another place, landed on this earth 30,000 years ago, and set up these directions of civilization as far as understanding what happened and what was going to happen, we can take it more seriously. And they knew it was going to happen because they had been through it themselves. With the science, the jet streams move in a particular way, from west to east. That's why we see storms that come in off the Pacific and they wind up all the way here in Jersey as snowstorms. Nothing's going to change that. It's not going to move from east to west. But is there a change? Now this is the point you want to think about. Is there a change that occurs within the natural force of space-time that allows one who might know mathematically how to figure out when something is going to happen? I don't want to confuse you, but I'm simply talking about, is there something that we can't see that is in the quantum world that is going to move in the same way that the jet stream moves from east to west, and nothing changes that? What other kind of invisible force moves? There is an invisible accelerating force. NASA can launch a rocket from Florida, and they can pinpoint down to the second when it will reach a specific point in Mars or Venus. They know, because everything moves at an exact rate in that cosmic force, and everything moves in an exact kind of cycle. We can predict to the second when it will arrive, and nothing other than a mechanical failure will change that. And so what we've got here is the prediction of the arrival of the force, which has arrived and is now changing things right in front of our eyes, and the culmination of that to take place December the 21st, 2012. The Emerald UFO Force was able to predict this, and their computations are now being confirmed by others within our own time frame, who are able to calculate this. And one I told you about, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, was a Catholic priest who coined this time the Omega Point. And I might add, as a Catholic priest, he got in a hell of a lot of trouble because he was saying this stuff and was told to cool it, which he did for a while. But now let's think of something. The Omega, Alpha and Omega. Alpha is the beginning, Omega is the end. Does the Omega Point figure into December the 21st, 2012? And the answer is yes. There is a point when all things that have been changing over space-time reach a certain acceleration. They've gone too fast, and wisdom, in order to control these things, cannot catch up. And they hit this door, which is the Omega Point. It introduces a whole new way, see? Now, the experiences that all of us have in life are subject to changes which are called fractal, F-R-A-C-T-A-L. It means they occur before our eyes, and yet we don't know who ordered the change. We don't know who created it. It just happens on its own. And when the changes occur, we just change with them. We don't say, oh, did you notice it changed? No, we just go about. And we consider the internet. It wasn't there. Suddenly it's everywhere. Where'd it come from? Suddenly it's there. Now it has consumed everybody. Even people that couldn't type or couldn't, everybody's on this thing. Our whole way of life, from a point where we never heard of such a thing, is now we couldn't conceive of not having it. So our whole way of life has been skewed to an electrical form that we can't imagine at one time wasn't here. I mean, some of the younger people, when Joan and I talk to them, can't believe. I mean, in the old days, I'm talking about old days. I used to pick up the telephone and there'd be maybe 3 or 4 families on there fighting as to who gets to use it next. Hey, and you'd hear some other guy yelling, "Get off the phone, let somebody else." You had about 6 different families in one line. Can you imagine that? We got our first television set, and the picture was this big. And in order to make colored television, we bought a plastic thing to put on the front of it with blue on the top and green on the bottom and brown in the middle. That was colored TV. We thought that was the real. But you see, all of a sudden there was nothing. Then there was this television, and now look. I mean, it's, you can't conceive. See, it took millions of years to get to the point of that, and then it just instantly, everything else goes real fast. It builds one on top of the other, and that's what gets you to that omega point. It wasn't there, and we lived one way. Then it was there, and now we live another way. And as it evolved, we changed, and it continues to add on to itself, consistently changing us, and we're just along for the ride. What's next? What's new? What's going to happen? The other day I was playing some records. What? Yeah, records. Remember records? Oh, gee. But you know what I'm doing? I'm taking the old records and I'm converting them and burning them onto CDs, so we play them in a car. And I was playing some old stuff, Johnny Mathis, and Joan was commenting on how poetic and filled with love the songs were. Chances are, and all that stuff. I left my heart in San Francisco, and all this stuff. There was poets writing this stuff. And then the people that sang really could sing and everything. It was amazing. Well, it's changed. And I'm not knocking. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. It's just that we've gone from slow dancing and love songs to acid rock, heavy metal. It's just a different culture. It portrays something totally different, and all of a sudden it consumes us, and we're all there. Do you ever, want to see the difference? Remember the old movies? They, love movies. Gregory Peck and Cary Grant, they would love movies and all that. Now, as you sit and watch television, all of a sudden an ad comes on for the newest movie, and it practically blows you out the window. There are fires and explosions and trucks slamming in. I woke up on the couch the other day from like, what the heck was that? So it all changed, and we became carried along on kind of a magic carpet ride. And I'm not saying which was better, but let me give you an example of what, here is, up on the left is Frank Sinatra, and down here you have Kiss to right. And I mean, nothing could be different. Now, nobody said that this is any worse than this or this is any better than that. That's not the point I'm making. I'm just making the point that what happened, who changed it, nobody asked to change it. It just did. And then we're all there. See? We used to go, Joan and I used to go years ago to the concerts to see Liberace, remember? Remember Liberace? The gay guy with the candelabras, he playing the piano and all that. Now we have Bruce Springsteen. I mean, and it's completely different. And as I said, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm trying to show you what's going on with the omega point. It just changes by itself. Changes by itself. See, a drastic change occurs and we change with it. I mean, years ago, we got in front of black and white TVs and you couldn't wait to get home. You couldn't work. I mean, you had to be home for Tuesday night. Milton Berle was going to be on, or Ed Sullivan, and these were shows that were an hour long and they were all live and everything. And you, look, you remember any of these people? Sure, Carol Burnett, Jackie Gleason, Dean Martin, and Milton Berle, and Flip Wilson, and Flip Wilson, and Red Skelton. And you know, all I'm saying is, they disappeared. Wait a second, they died. I know they died, but there's nobody to take their place. It was just a whole thing, and it went away. It's gone. And all these, every night they were on live, and they had dancing, and it was all live, and they made mistakes, and now it's all replaced with discs and tape, and nobody knows. And where'd it go? Where'd everybody go? And nobody said we shouldn't have this. It just went away. Does the move to the omega point take routes that are unpredictable for a reason? Is there a reason that they were here and then they're gone? Is it a reason, maybe the mind having experienced this and then experienced now, having experienced the Sinatra, now experienced the Bruce or whatever, is the mind eventually going to have to come to the omega point and make a choice? Because you've had the opportunity to experience the different things. How do things change? You should have seen my car back in the 50s. It had fins on it that if it hit you, you'd slice your head off. A tremendous change occurred. Somehow, I mean, you remember? Here, look at that. That gave way to that. I mean, everybody knew you by the color and your fins and the chrome and all that stuff. Nobody knows you anymore. Because it looks like they all come out of the same mold. And they went from super colors to gray. Why? But it just happened. It just was a change. See, in every phase of life, there was a change. And it seemed like we got to the peak, and then everything fell. Whoa, you go way up here, look at it. Man, it's like having it's like and then we got this. I can't even find them when we come out of the shop right. I don't know which one it is. They're all in, they're all the same. I had to beep the horn. I wouldn't have to beep the horn if I knew that. I would know. I'd look for my fins. So we come from a very creative period to a creative period that's not so creative. We came from a more humane period when the cows are in the fields and the chickens were running around to a very less humane period. We came from a gentler time of slow dancing and love songs to a harder time. In all things, in families, in entertainment, and in ourselves. So the technology continues to speed up, you know? And you know why? Because, we have LED TV now, but that's not going to be good enough in a year from now. We got cell phones that take your picture and do video. But that's not, something else has got to happen, you know? And all these things, there has to be something else. What's new? They sit in the boardroom. Well, you got any ideas? What are we going to do now? We got to make this 15% bottom line cash flow. So what's going to happen? But you get to the point where the omega factor says, nothing's going to happen. That's it. You see, because one thing that has not changed like this has is the rapid development of technology, which grinds on with bigger things and better things, while the mind seems unable to keep up with the machines themselves. Do you know, can I tell you, do you know one of the things, if you study this, what concerns many scientists now? The computer age will eventually create a computer that will be smarter than the people that invented, and that computers then will have to invent the next computer, and so people will cease to be important. Oh, what do we do? You see, let me give you an example of why the omega point is necessary. We had the knowledge to invent nuclear power, and we found that nuclear power could light homes. But we also found it could incinerate cities. So we rushed to make atomic bombs. When the Wright brothers invented airplanes, boy, we can take a covered wagon, 6 months, we can go across the country. But you know what? When we found that planes could take us around the world in a little time, we also found, hey, these things are great for dropping bombs on people. Yeah, we got to get a lot of those. So we found also that technology could do amazing healings for all kinds of illnesses. But we also found that we could place a price tag on it that would amass great wealth. And so we don't want to get too much healing going on here, you know what I mean? We got a good thing going here. We don't want to be curing this cancer stuff. I mean, after all, there's a lot of money here. Ed, I think I've got the cure to cancer. Shoot that guy. Don't do that. We don't want to cure it. We want to keep getting medicine to treat it. Never cure it, just treat it. Treat it. Treat it. You reach the omega point, you're done bad now. Somebody gave you the knowledge, but what did you lack with the knowledge? You lacked wisdom. See? You had it, but you didn't use it for the right purposes. You reached the omega point. Technology has constantly evolved upward, but wisdom seems to have evolved downward. And that's where you've got to consider the omega point in December 21st. That's where zero was reached. Our creations have now created us. Do you understand that? We have been created by our creations. I can't go anywhere without my cell phone. I've got one. Nobody ever calls me on the damn thing, but I've got it. I couldn't be called without it.
You'll go back in there?
That's right. I go back and get it. And my goodness gracious, the internet. I mean, do you see how creations create us? And they have us doing things differently than we used to because the things now are there for us and we have to use them. What I have been describing to you is a force that exists like a howling wind that you can't hear, a howling wind that changes everything, but you only become aware that the wind was here when we look at the things that were swept away and the things that we've tried to put in their place. So what has happened is we've been given very powerful things, but we have not allowed the wisdom to use these things properly to catch up. And we fulfill a prophecy of the Emerald Fleet, the 0 point, the omega point, in 2012 lumbers closer and closer. And you can feel the change. You know it. You can sense it. You're living in a time when people around the world literally hate each other. And they don't even know each other. I remember in the old days when the political parties in the United States would disagree, Mr. Chairman, and all that kind of stuff. But now it isn't that they disagree. They hate each other. And they suggest violence. Everybody is against global warming because the guy that was the mouthpiece for it was Al Gore. If the mouthpiece for it was George Bush, everybody on that side would say, oh, global warming is bad. And all the Al Gore friends would say, that's a bunch of crap. If Al Gore said it, everybody in George Bush said, oh, that Al Gore here, what the hell he's talking about. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any difference anymore what's right. It depends on what group you belong to. What's going on? So it's time to find out, because you're not that far. And don't worry about getting to 25. The crisis is going to occur today, tomorrow. You're in the middle. Where did it come from? Is this a normal evolution that requires people to change? If people don't change, will this go faster and faster and faster? Will it all change faster and faster until it hits that point? And what I'm talking about has been spoken of by many researchers and writers. And recently the question of an accelerating evolution to a point of too much technology and no wisdom has been attached to the prophecy of 2012. And I'll tell you what many call it. It's called singularity. The 0 point. Pierre Teilhard Chardin, the omega point. The question isn't entirely new. It comes from a physicist by the name of Paul Davies in his book, God and the New Physics. I would recommend it to you. He's an excellent physicist, and this book is one you'll be able to understand. A lot of this stuff goes over your head, but that one you'll be able to understand. I heartily recommend the book. You'll enjoy it very much, and for the most part, you'll get it. But there's another guy by the name of Nassim Haramein who took us to a form of singularity with the 64 tetrahedron, which is found in the vacuum. You say, what is the vacuum? No, that's not what the vacuum is. The vacuum is empty space. But it's not empty. That's the point. That's what the 64 tetrahedron is. So the geometric pattern that is found in the first 8 cells of your body is the tetrahedron, which is a 3-dimensional Star of David, which is also found in the right hand of the Emerald UFO commander. Okay? And the 64 tetrahedron, the tetrahedron, which is that 3-dimensional Star of David, which is inside of you, the first 8 cells, it replicates itself downward to the 0 point. But it's always the same, It's like we're saying here. Oh, this was wonderful. This ain't so wonderful. That's pretty good. This ain't too good. Yeah, what the hell? We're getting to a point where you just keep going down and you self-destruct. It just replicates itself. Let me show you the tetrahedron, and you can see it here. You see it's the Star of David? It's not really. But it's all the way out here. But it's going and it's replicating itself. It's the same thing. It'll always be the same, but the change will take it smaller and smaller until it reaches the 0 point. Here are the first 8 cells in your body, which is the tetrahedron. That's the first 8 cells that formed in your body when you were a fetus, the tetrahedron. Everything in the vacuum, anything in space is the tetrahedron. And so that 0 point here is all of this tremendous creation here. Down and down it goes. And it has to come to a stopping point, the omega point. And what scientists are saying, that right there is December 21st, 2012. A force activated in the universe and in your head that moves us to a point where an end occurs, and what does it say? The end of the world? No. It says, oh, you're going too fast here. You know, it's like if you're going around a curve and you realize you're going too fast, you pull back, slow it down. Why do we have to slow it down? Because your technology is way up here, but your wisdom is way back here. And that presents a very serious problem for the universe, for life, for Earth. You can't have technology like that accelerating at such a rapid rate with no wisdom connected with it. You're going to have big trouble. So the consistent theme that has developed in our technological skills has reached a point where it can't go any further. We're like in a tide in the ocean. Paul Davies gives a couple of very simple examples of singularity and its effect as a cosmic force, looking at point zero and evolution. This is called Force 1000. Okay? Let's go way back to the beginning where it took this much effort, but it was only able to produce this much. Well, then we started to build on what the effort that was made here, and it took this much effort to get that much. Still tough. Well, we built on these two. You know, we got the plane, and then we got the rockets. And then we got to the point where the effort was here at 100, and we got this much, starting to get more and quicker results. And we kept building until it was, the effort was 50, the result was 20. Pretty good. Now we got it down. We don't have that much effort in order to get a 2050. Now the effort's down to 10 and we're getting 100. The effort's down to 5, we're getting 200. The effort's down to 2, we're getting 500. We're going so damn fast, see? Because all of the work that has been done in the past, we're building on. We're taking all the experience from this. Oh, we're going to need computers. Yeah, but we don't need factories anymore because we know how to make them. We don't need distribution points anymore because we don't know how to make them. All you got to do is make the computers. They're going to spread them all over the place. Oh, we can do it. All you got to do is put a 2 effort and you can come out with a 500. Do you understand that? So you go way back in time and see all the effort that was put in to make such a little bit, and now a little bit of effort makes a lot, and then you say you have to get to the point where this is going to have to stop. There. Bell invents the phone. It takes 1 million years for that to happen, and then somebody builds on it. And so then the question after you get your latest razzmatazz thing is, what's next? But the omega point says you finally reach a place where nothing can be next because a new way is required. And the brutal treatment of factory farm animals is a good example. Boy, we used to only be able to get this much meat. We had about 10 cows out there, but now look what we can do. We can jam them all together, fill them full of antibiotics so they don't make any sickness. We can look, we got these new machines. We don't even have to get them to lay eggs. They put out and they're coming out and the machine takes them out and everything. And it's great. And then what do you got as a result? You got the scientists at Johns Hopkins saying, this is scaring the hell out of us. We're going to have a plague. Millions of people are going to die because the antibiotics in these animals is causing it to be in people. They eat it, and you're not going to be able to save lives by new antibiotics. This is what we've created. We've created our own suicide. We've created a nightmare. And that's exactly what Paco Votan says. You're going to so improve your technological skills for profit that you're going to lose your sacred interdependence with nature. So the animal ceases to be an animal. Now it's just material, and we've defiled the Creator. More and more meat, more and more money. But there's a point that you hit the door, and when the scientist at Johns Hopkins says the omega point, they didn't say omega point, but the point is when that happens, that's the omega point. And once you hit it, you can't go in. Did you know that? The omega point is a door that you have to stop because you never can get in there. It's zero. Now, it's zero. You can't get in there. You have to go in a different direction. You have to go in a different direction. Let me show you what he showed. Think of the smallest number. Come now. Hold it. Think of the smallest number this side of 0. Well, you probably say 1? No. What do you mean no? Because you can divide 1. That's smaller. Is that it? No. How come? Because you can divide it. That's smaller. Well, then that's it. No. Because you can divide it. And then, is that it? No. You can divide it. Is that it? No. You can divide it. There is no number. You can never get to the omega point. You can never get inside of it because everything can divide. Just more zeros and more zeros and more zeros, but you can never open the door of the omega point. You got to change then, see? You got to turn around and go in the other direction. There's a geometric force in all cellular and subatomic existence that carries us along like the tide of the ocean. Faster and faster and faster we go. So that as we move along and we're trying to understand existence more fully, there's this continual technological progress, quicker and quicker and quicker, one development building on the back of another, taking us to the 0 point, which indeed may be December the 21st, 2012, the point where we cannot go any further and have to start a new path of life and consciousness. We're inventing things, we're changing things, we're using things, and we never consider that there is a force that propels our ways through one cycle into another cycle. Let's look at Paul Davies. There is no conflict in a universe that evolves according to a well-defined law of physics, but is nevertheless subject to the intelligent control. God is portrayed as an explanation of supernatural agency acting on the world in defiance of natural law. You see it all the time. Well, a person, oh, God will heal them. Oh, you got to say, oh, God will do this, God will do that. But it's possible for what we encounter in the universe to be the product of intelligent manipulation of a natural kind within the laws of physics. Aha. Staying inside of the created law, manipulating us as such. Our galaxy could have been made by a powerful mind. Wait till you hear this. Think about it. Now, think about it. Here's we've been inventing things for 100 years. What about people in another place in the universe that have been inventing things for 40,000 years? And so what happens? Our galaxy could have been made by a powerful mind who rearranged the primeval gases with controlled explosions as an astro engineer, but with such a superintelligence, be God? Wonder if there was a guy named Fred who was an astro engineer on some faraway planet, and they're 40,000 years ahead of us, and Fred comes in one day in the meeting in the boardroom and said, hey, guess what? What? He said, I got this figured out. If we put this, that, and the other thing together, it could actually puff into a galaxy. You sure, Fred? Yeah, let's try it. He tries it, you got a galaxy. Fred, congratulations, you're going to get this year's Christmas bonus. You got a whole galaxy out there, Fred. And Fred says, yeah, but you know what? Down here, there's a planet there with a sun around it that I made. Why don't we fly down there and see what it's like? So Fred and the gang comes down, and they land there. And they start messing around with DNA. You're praying to God, and his name is Fred. And you know the funny thing is, that may be true. My goodness, think of that. Wow. Fred Jackson, Louise Smith, maybe they created all this stuff. Yeah. I mean, you know, you say, oh, that they can't create. Oh yeah, oh yes. We got a Hadron Collider that's going to be spinning again, and it might create a black hole, and we might all disappear. So what are you going to do about it? You know what you're going to do about it? You're going to disappear. And you'll just say, boy, did you feel that? Something's going on here. Oh, Fred's at it again. How far can one go before you hit the omega point? And it's not the end. The omega is the end as we knew it. A particular path has come to an end. You've got to take another path. So you have to take what you've developed and you've got to move in a different direction. A course correction has to be made. Because if it's not, you could get into an uncontrollable dive that can result in a complete suicidal crash. So there's a manipulation here to make a course correction. Fred sees, hey, we got the force, we better make a change, course correction. And a course correction's made, and all of a sudden we know, hey, what happened to the rock bands? I mean, you got some guy up there singing doobie-doobie-doo, what? Where'd everybody go? That's what happened. It's exactly what, you've lived through it. And you know that's what happens. What Davies is saying, wait a minute, I think I missed one. Go to the next one. Oh, okay. God is conceived as the creator of the whole universe, not merely as a galactic architect. But no being who is obliged to operate within the physical universe following existing law can be considered as the universal creator. Suppose our astro engineer could create all galaxies and even bend space and time. That would be Fred. New physics gives us a curious slant here. Given enough energy and resources, it is within the power of human beings to make a black hole. I told you about that. At the center of the black hole is singularity, space, and time. So even we can create and destroy space and time. Does that make us God? Because God's going to get up and say, where the hell did everything go? Jesus, is that Fred loose again? I spent 1 million years making this. Look what he did in a half hour. But it's true. It's true. We are primitive compared to the intelligence that's out there. Someone has to apply the brakes. An intelligent mind says, okay, let's set up a point where we have to stop the progress here. It's going too fast. We got to alter the consciousness. We got to redirect the movement. We got to insert a new wisdom free of obsessive profit and greed. Now, the profit and greed was necessary at a point. The profit and greed stimulated people to create things that they could sell. It's all right, that's okay. But now it's becoming more important than the mind, you see? It's like we have Aetna healthcare insurance. They have a new slogan, and it is just say no. That's it, no matter what it is. You'll get a letter, no. Why? Because I said so. And so you have to write to Senator Lautenberg and this and that and say, hey, they won't, no, and nobody, You know, this is what it is. Profit and greed now has got to the point where it is no longer important that we make a profit by giving you good things. It is now just important we make a profit, whether the stuff is good or not. The hell with it. Doesn't make any difference. But once that point, the omega point, is established, profit can be restored to propel the creative mind further along in a grander scale, but guided more closely by the wisdom which has caught up, making the advances more friendly to the planet and its life. And another point that Paul Davies makes is that the universe is cyclical. You know what's so beautiful about this that he shows? Your universe breathes in and out, just like you do. In and out. Look. The oscillating universe suffers from physical problems associated with old universes. We have an old universe. Each new cycle of expansion and contraction is sort of a new deal in which the physical conditions are scrambled randomly. Some physicists have speculated that the highly compressed cosmos, rather than imploding to a space-time singularity, will bounce to an enormous density and a new cycle of expansion and contraction. That may be a little over our heads, but you get the idea that there's an intelligence here. It's a living, breathing universe, moving back and forth, oscillating. And we see how the human existence flows in a harmony as human events are based on cycles and expansion and contraction. We have this, now we have that. And we have this phone, and now we have that. We don't have this, but we're going to make this. And on and on and on it goes. So any kind of a 0 point, any kind of an omega point, any kind of a 2012 would affect not only the living, breathing universe that we are part of, but the quantum, photonic, and atomic structures that we ourselves are. It's not some kind of possibility that we can rationally change. It's the life dance itself, and we're on the dance floor whether we like it or not. And the point that Paul Davies brings to us is there is a mathematic necessity. It's not unlike Nassim Haramein about self-replicating 64 tetrahedron. Things happen by themselves. Why? Because they do. When they come to the Buddha and said, what the heck is going on? Why did this happen? He would look him in the eye and say, such is the nature of things. Indeed, 2012 is a mathematical necessity. All the cosmic structures will fall in place. But the question you have to keep in your mind, is there a necessity based on something other than simple movement governed by gravity? Paul Davies quotes somebody, and I never heard of before, by the name of Sir James Jeans, who once said God is a mathematician. And that's why the ancient geometric patterns and those that we see in crop formations hold such interest. And this is what Davies says, and it brings us back to the need for the universe itself to slow the process of the earth mind. We're going to wrap this up with this one, because I've got a lot more to do with this. We're going to be taken off on a wild trip by Terence McKenna in a bit, but I don't want to over... You know, there was... Joan and I used to have these gospel concerts, and we had a group from Asbury Park called the Missionary Jubileers, who were wonderful people, a black group, of course. And I remember one time they stayed late on something. They said, we got to go now, we got to go. I said, why do you have to go? He said, my mama told me, don't make people happy to see you twice. I said, what do you mean? He said, they want them to be happy to see you come and happy to see you go. And that's what I don't want to do. Let's see what Davies says. Mathematics is the poetry of logic. No expression of law can be more compelling than one based on simple logic. Hallelujah. This guy must be God connected. This is where the heck did we lose it? We lost it when we checked our brains at the church door and went in and listened to the lady talking to the snake. And If, as one believes, all mathematics reduces to the mathematics of logic, and all physics reduces to mathematics, what alternative is there but all physics to reduce to the mathematics of logic? Could it be that the universe is the way it is because it is an inevitable consequence of logical necessity? Jean d'Alembert wrote, "The entire creation would appear as a unique truth and necessity. If the universe is slowly choked to death by its own entropy, would God die too? Only a universe of cyclic varieties would appear to allow God to be infinite and eternal." And that cyclic variety is part of the great change of the Omega Point, or December the 21st, 2012. We'll get into the singularity and Terence McKenna when I see you next time. And I promise you this is going to just get better and better and more aware for you, and just explode in a great rose pattern of understanding that will bring to you. And before I wrap this, I just say that for those of you who come here are very special to both me and Joan, and I'm not leaving you at all, and I'll stay in touch with you closer than we even did before, because the stuff that's coming now is beyond any comprehension that any of us have. You're going to be let into the door, and the Omega door might even swing open, but it's going to be some wonderful, wonderful experiences coming up.
You have one more here. Do you want it? It dealt with singularity.
Paul Davies? Yeah, let's go. A singularity is the interface between the natural and the supernatural. Aha! That's where the Omega says you got to change. What comes out of a singularity is either total chaotic and unstructured, or is coherent and organized. That would mean the universe emerges with a degree of organization present, wound up and ready for action. There is an ultimate question of existence. Physics can explain the origin and organization of the physical universe, but not the laws. Perhaps the laws will emerge to be the only logically possible physical principle. Okay, so we'll wrap it up now, and then we'll build on this next week into pretty exciting and amazing stuff that even comes right down to the UFO guy you know as Jesus. We'll see you. Bye-bye.